Good morning, you train-loving Shire hobbits. How are we doing today? Welcome back to the shed for part 2 of our rock building extravaganza. Well, I wouldn't call it an extravaganza, really. More like a mini tutorial. But anyway, how are we all doing, folks? I hope you're all keeping well. Thank you for joining me once again in Le Shed. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of our rock building extravaganza, like I say. And we're going to get straight into this today. It's got a lot to get through. So I'll quick suffer my tea. It's going to be chilly now, to be fair. So, where we left off last time round, if you remember, if you haven't seen it yet, go back and watch part 1 because you missed out on building these things. After I cut the cameras last time round, I continued with building this particular rock face, and this is the one where I put the paper over the top of the insulating foam. Okay, since then I have painted it black. As you can see, it is nice and straightforward, matte black, and it is a basic acrylic paint purchased from, I forget what I got it now, but it's nothing spectacular, just a really basic acrylic paint. Right, so let's make a start and show you. The first colour we're going to be using is going to be Humbrol. It is a camouflage grey in the little dropper bottles. And you get a little bit of paint on your brush and then take it off again on your blue roll. Okay, once it's down to virtually nothing, a little bit left in the brush, we can then start dry brushing over the top of our rock faces. You're just trying to skim the edge a little bit. And at first you're thinking that's making absolutely no difference whatsoever, but trust me, it is. Very, very good. And what it does, it picks out little highlights as you go over it. Now if you go over all of this and at the end of it think I've made a right Mary of that, don't panic. Just paint it black and start again. So we keep putting more on until we're happy with the level of grey. Don't want to overpower it. You still need some of the black on there to kind of really be a contrast and show off the darker sections of the rocks, really. That's good. Okay, right, so we'll leave that there. He says, doing a bit more. Let that dry for a little bit. Okay, so that's dried off a little bit. The lighting isn't very good in here. I'll try and show you here. There you go. You can see it's not very tidy or neat. It's just, you can see the dry brushing of the grey. It's just got rid of all that dark black blobbiness, and it's now starting to show a bit of definition of the where the paper's all crinkled over the polystyrene. So the next bit to do is a bit more grey paint. There we go. A bit more of the camouflage grey. There we go. What we need to do there is make it lighter. So I'm going to add a little bit of standard Humbrol matte white, which is number 34. Let's add a little bit of that, and we're going to just make this a little bit lighter grey. I don't want to go too mad, but we'll mix this up together. There we go. It's definitely more grey than there is white, but it will lighten the colour quite nicely. And this is what I've discovered so far, is for each layer just make it a lighter colour or lighter shade of grey and put less of it on, and it seems to work. So once again, the brush full of paint, you can see how much paint's in there. I'm going to take most of that out, really get into your blue paper and really get all of that off again. Like I say, it seems like a terrible waste of paint, but the effect is well worth it. So here we go again then. Right, let's just try and brush this across gently. And again, you might think at first it's having no effect, but all of a sudden it does come back to life again. So it's raining and someone's got the lawnmower going. Someone's a bit keen out there, aren't they? What I'm trying to really do is catch these raised edges with this lighter grey. I'm not trying to paint the whole thing as one colour, just brush it kind of down across these little ridges that have appeared. There we go. Okay, right, that looks pretty good. And because we've still got a load of paint left on there, we can use that and put a bit more white in. There we go. Mix that in. Okay, cool. Hopefully you can see this now. There we go. So you're starting to get a really nice little effect of rocks there. I don't want to go too much with the grey now. I think that's kind of getting to a point where I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to start moving on to the white, much more brighter white, and I think we've got enough grey kicking on there now to kind of match what I've already got up there. Okay, so the colours that I'm using and this particular effect I've used so far on all of the layout, exactly the same colours. And you can see it's quite quick and quite easy, and it does give you a really good little effect, I think. But like I said, I'm not rewriting the rule books here. I'm doing nothing that you can't find on YouTube elsewhere. But it's quite simple to do. And you can take as much time over it as you want, or you can rush it through as much as you like. It seems to be, and I'm rushing this like a good one because it's on a video. But admittedly, I did take a bit more time over the ones that I've done that are actually on the layout already. But yeah, you can take as much time or as little time as you need. And for the final colour, it is literally going to be the standard matte white. So with the white, I think exactly the same thing. Put it on, and then take it all off. With this white layer, shall we say, I'm just pulling downwards with it, which can often leave little streaks like this coming down here, and I quite like that. It kind of gives an effect of maybe water running down over the years, and a little bit of natural wear on the rock faces, which I quite like as an effect, and certainly wouldn't be put off by it at all. But yeah, you get the gist. That's pretty much where we are with a rock face. Okay, it looks pretty bland still at the moment, but when we get some grass on there and some other bits and pieces, it will start coming more alive. Okay, so we'll leave that to dry for now and come back to it in a bit. Okay, right, so here we go. That's all nice and dry now. Our rock face paint is now done. Now comes the exciting part, to turn it from rocks into something that looks more alive. So I'm going to add, I like, for example, on the ones I've done up here, I've been putting grass up on the top, and grass on some of these little ridges that I've left deliberately to make it look like maybe grass has fallen down over time and started to grow in these areas. So what is under grass? Earth. So you've got to paint those bits brown, okay, where your grass is going to be. And for that, I'm going to use Humbrol matte brown. Now, you're not going to see this once it's basically covered in grass. Okay, so don't worry about it being too neat and tidy. But what we're also going to add into this is a little bit of Humbrol dark earth weathering powder. Start off, we're going to get a bit of weathering powder on the brush, and then add it to a little bit of that. We're going to water this down a tad. There we go, a little bit of water there as well. There we go. Yes, brilliant. Exactly what I wanted. A bit more weathering powder in there. Okay, so on the brush, I don't know if you can see this, you've got a bit of weathering powder, you've got a bit of paint, a bit of water. We're just going to put it onto the areas where we're going to put our grass in here. Using the water, it's almost like a wash almost. A wash brown, there we go. Right across the top, perhaps add a bit more weathering powder in there. especially towards the edges. That's where you want your weathering powder, because that's the bit that's going to show up the most. Okay, just for a little bit of extra excitement, we're going to mention the grass coming across the top here. Now when it rains you get mud and dirt flowing down from the front of the cliff face, so we're going to add a little bit of excitement and just bring a little bit of this brown in places, just down across the front. Again, nothing major, just every now and then. I do find that if you try and plan where to put this stuff, it doesn't always work. The more random you are, the kind of more better results you kind of get. There's one or two places here and there, because I haven't got to be exactly perfect with it, but don't be frightened to let that brown stuff fall down the rock face in random places. Okay, so the next stage for this is going to be adding a little bit of green. Now I am using, where are we, Humbrol acrylic number 226 matte, but so you don't need much of this stuff, like a tiny little blob. And what we're going to try and create here is, obviously as with nature, you'll find that things get a bit damp and you get a bit of moss here and there. We're going to create some moss with some powders in a second, but we're going to add a little bit of moss towards the bottom of this, and again around areas where we're going to have some grass. So we don't need loads of it, and I might even water that down a tad. So I've got a little bit of water here into that, and a fairly stiff-ish brush. See, it goes to like a pale green. Now don't be alarmed at this bright green colour, it will fade down once it's on and soaked in and dry, but again just dabbing this around the bottom area of the rocks. But again around the bottom of here by the earth. Okay, there we go. So I'm just adding little bits of green here and there where I think moss might settle down. Usually I'd have thought, not that I'm any expert on nature, but I'd have said that moss would settle on the top of little ridges where the water can sit and collect. If you've noticed, I haven't gone back for any more paint. Just that one dab of the brush has been more than enough. Just dabbing the edge. Okay, so there we go. That is where we're up to. We're going to let that dry for a little while, get some lunch, then we're going to come out and add some greenery, make it look a bit more lifelike. Okay, right, so had some lunch and a cup of tea. I'm going to take our little rock face and try and make this look a bit more natural. So we're going to be using some static grass from WWScenics, and I'm going to be using my homemade static grass applicator, which is a bit on and off in terms of the results it gives me. Sometimes it works brilliantly, sometimes it doesn't seem to work quite so well. So although I thought it was a good idea making my own one, personally I really think I should have saved up a bit more money and bought the proper job, to be fair. But what we're going to do is we're going to crack on with this. First job is going to be putting some like a base grass down. I've got something fairly small, something like a 2mm grass to give like a bit of a base layer. Then we'll add some longer grass on top of that. So the first job we have is some basing glue. There are reasons why people don't use PVA, but what those reasons are I haven't got a clue. But there you go. So we're going to pour some of this onto here. Plenty of glue across the top of there. That's where we want to put our main batch of grass. The piece I'm working on today is not going to be on the layout at all. It's just purely for demonstration purposes. So I'm not going to be expending totally loads of time doing this and making it absolutely perfect. Okay, so using the same glue, get it spread a bit more that direction as well. I think I'd like my grass to come down onto here as well. And onto that patch here where we put the brown paint earlier. Bit of extra glue on there. Perhaps across here as well. A little bit of grass. And definitely across the bottom. So let's get down a base layer of the 2mm. Let's move the glue out of the way. The old grass spread across there, look. It's nice and tidy. Getting onto the base area. Jiggle it around a little bit. Try to make the grass stand on end. There we go. And that's your base grass in position. Okay, so the next layer I'm going to be doing is some 6mm patchy grass. It's a bit more of a burnt kind of colour. Don't be frightened to mix the colours. I always think that, say, look in my garden at the moment, half my lawn is green, half of it's yellow, it's a bit brown. So there's not really like a uniform colour going on in most of my experience of grasses. So we're going to add a bit of longer, browner grass. Now for this I'm going to use the old layering spray from WWScenics. I'm going to spray that across the patch of grass up here and trying to capture the edge without trying to get it too much onto the actual rock face. Always a challenge, but it is doable. I'll do this slightly off of thing about facing away from me. There we go. Right. Let's give this a go, shall we? Okay. Little shake off. Brilliant. Yeah, that's looking a bit more rustic, shall we say. Now if you've got bits of grass where you don't really want bits of grass, now's the time to get a little paintbrush and take it back off again while it's still, what's the word, removable before it sticks down permanent. So the final length of grass I'm going to put on there is 4mm autumn grass. I want to put it in a very, very small patch, not loads and loads of this stuff, so just a little bit in the hopper this time round. A little bit more layering spray. I think I might go towards this side with that, I think. A bit on there. A little bit down this side. That's cool. There we go. Look at that. That's quite smart, doesn't it? Wonderful. Moving swiftly on, I'm sure many of you have seen over the last few weeks a lot of railway modeller YouTube channels have been going on about what bargains you can get on Temu. I did have a little look, and amazingly, it's absolutely true. You can go onto Temu and buy some absolutely banging stuff. There's some blooming awful stuff, but there's also some really good stuff. I'll show you a few things. This is a huge bag of bright green material. It's kind of like a stringy kind of stuff. Okay, now the colour it comes in is quite leery green, and if you take one strand of it, you can see it's basically just a frayed cord. Okay, but it looks nice and smart. You can do all sorts of things with it. It does stick to your fingers, something chronic. I've actually got some put it in some watered down green paint and made it slightly darker compared to the original, and I've been using that as a decent bit of foliage, which is quite nice. Also got these rather nice little pink flowers, which are again attached to a very similar kind of material to this, and they look really nice on the layout as well. Okay, so we'll add a few of these things to our little rock face. So we're going to start off with this stuff here. There we go. It's quite a stringy substance, but what I've been using is watered down PVA and water mix. Seems to work as well as anything. We're going to put this into here. Here's your glue. And get a bit of the jollop. Put that in there. Rather than just chucking it in as a little ball, try to let it hang a bit randomly like it's kind of grown a bit wild, you know. Again, with plants, you tend to find they kind of grow into each other. So don't be frightened to overlap them. Let them mingle in with each other, because they will in reality, I suppose. And then I've got some other little bushes here as well, which we can bring into the equation. I picked these up in Hobbycraft, and I think these are WWScenics. Little bits of green foam. I think we'll put these in this little ridge here, I think. Okay, so that's that bit there. Now, this area over here, I'd like to bring in a bit of moss. As we mentioned before, bringing in the green moss paint, which we did. This section here, I think, would be quite nice with a little bit of green scatter, just to bring in a bit of a different texture. Tiny little bit of spray, just on that area. WWScenics scatter. There we go. If you can see that one, the burnt grass colour. I'm going to put that in a little tea strainer. Okay, so now that's all nice and dry. As I mentioned before, when you paint these things, as the paint dries out, everything gets a bit lighter in its shade, and that's definitely the case here. I think everything has got lighter and it looks more like rocks, which I'm actually really chuffed with. For a little demonstration piece, it actually turned out better than what I thought it was going to, if I'm really honest. So yeah, you could use any colours you wanted to, really. You could use any kind of foliage, any kind of colour grass. You can add bits in, add trees and all sorts of little things. But that is basically the technique that I used for all of my rock faces. Okay, just as a little side note, if you wanted to copy the exact method that I've used, I have left some affiliate links for the Humbrol paints and the weathering powder in the description below. And I'll also put in some links for the WWScenics grasses that I've used. Okay, as you saw, I've used a homemade static grass applicator. Mine isn't the best in the world, and I would recommend a decent one that actually works properly all the time. So it's worth looking at them while you're on the WWScenics website. So on that note, I think we're kind of done. I think that is a pretty comprehensive, if not rather boring, tutorial. My first tutorial. Woo! If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll do my very best to answer them as best I can. Check out the affiliate links for the Humbrol paints. And all being well, I'll see you on the next video. So yeah, thanks once again for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. All the best.